as with any research we talk about this semester, we're going to be interrogating our claims with the four validities, same as before. So we are going to be thinking about construct validity, statistical validity, internal validity, and external validity. And all four apply when we're talking about experiments. So we've talked about the Mueller and Oppenheimer research, and we know that there are a number of things that we have found that, for example, conceptual understanding, conceptual performance is better longhand than on a laptop, that word count that people make is longer on a laptop than when you're writing longhand. And finally, that verbatim overlap between what people include in their notes and what they have in or what was said in the video, those are also much higher with laptops. And these are things that the researchers predicted. What they concluded is this study provides initial experimental evidence that laptops may harm academic performance, even when used as intended. Participants using laptops are much more likely to take lengthier transcription-like notes with greater verbatim overlap with the lecture. Although taking more notes, thereby having more information, is beneficial, mindless transcription seems to offset the benefit of the increased content, at least when there's no opportunity for review. Note that they are saying that there are some limitations to what they're concluding. Maybe we can't generalize across a variety of different kinds of situations. So first off, construct validity. How well were the variables measured and manipulated? So we're thinking about our dependent variables, in terms of word count, verbatim, verbatim overlap, the conceptual and factual measures. So, for example, with the verbatim overlap, how do they decide if there was a string of 7 words and 6 of them were the same as in the video? Did that count? How long did the string have to be? Did the raters agree as to what was a reasonable length? Then there's the independent variables. How well were they manipulated? Were the people assigned to the computer group, do they really use the computers to take notes, or did they use paper? That would be a manipulation check to make sure that your manipulation actually worked. And you might use pilot studies, either before, generally before, sometimes afterwards, to test to make sure that your variables were doing what they should have. So it's in some ways a kind of replication. Now, another way to pay attention to construct validity is to think about theory testing. So, for example, before the study, Mueller and Oppenheimer were predicting that there would be certain specific chain or differences that they saw. So, for example, that they expected to see that people who used a computer would write more and take more verbatim notes And they predicted that those would be related to poorer outcomes, less processing because you could just type everything. And they actually found what they had expected. So there's some construct validity there. In terms of external validity, we want to know who and what the claim generalizes to. So does it generalize to other people? Their participants were largely Princeton undergraduates. Would their findings apply to, to a state school? Would it apply to a community college? Would it apply to a high school? Okay. So these, what are they representative of? And who can we expect to generalize to? Would other videos work? Would other kinds of testing situations work? And if external validity is poor, that might be okay, because in general, experiments emphasize internal validity over external validity. With statistical validity, we're thinking about how large is our effect. And generally that depends on how spread, or what kind of spread we have with our scores. So you can see that both of these experiments have the same means, 9 and 11. But because there's more spread, the effect size is smaller, and actually a small effect size, where because these data points are more crunched, we have a larger and a good sized, a medium sized effect size. Now, small effect sizes can add up, so we're not going to necessarily conclude that this is a bad thing. As always, precise estimates are important, and we want them particularly when we want a precise estimate. We generally want a good size sample size. Notice that this particular confidence interval is fairly large and includes 0, so wouldn't be statistically significant, while this one, which is smaller, does not include 0 and therefore would be statistically significant. So we're thinking about sample size and variability here. So let's think about this article published by Medscape Psychiatry that's talking about prescription video game, or a prescription video game that focuses attention in ADHD. They say a prescription digital therapeutic shows measurable changes that correlate with improved attention control in children with attention deficit. Investigators found children who used the video game-based therapy, EndeavorRx, experienced increased brain activity related to attention function, as measured by EEG, which correlated with improvements in objective behavioral measures of attention. So think, do we have a correlation or an experiment? And how would you know? Think about what the independent variable is and our dependent variable. Pay attention to both the association claims and causal claims in this article, and think about what we can really conclude here, paying attention to covariance, temporal precedence, and internal validity. And finally, you probably want to know whether performance on EndeavorRx predicts attention, in school, for example, or during math assignments. So if so, what kind of validity is this? You might turn off your video, turn it back on again after you've answered the questions here. Now, think about statistical validity. Has a study been replicated? With Leonard et al., they included a number of different studies of small children and goal persistence, all that were very consistent. Mueller et al., we saw replication within within Mueller and Oppenheimer. The problem is that other studies have not replicated, their findings. If we're thinking about internal validity, there are 3 fundamental questions we're going to ask. Are there design confounds? So is there anything else that might explain what we're seeing? If it's an independent group's design, did the researchers control for selection effects using, random assignment? So using a die, for example, or toss of a coin to assign people to various groups. Did they use matching? If it's a within groups design, did researchers control for order effects by counterbalancing? If not, if, for example, the shared chocolate always came before the alone chocolate, then I might say that maybe this is a satiety effect. They're full and not tasting, not as hungry, rather than an effect related to whether somebody's there or not. Now, sampling problems always play out, as we talked about in this Taylor Swift video. And so we want to make sure that we are sampling well and think about who we're sampling and when we're sampling. So think about this example, and you'll find others in your PowerPoint, and whether this is random sampling or random assignment. So a research team invited college students who were taking an introductory psychology class into the laboratory. Students were asked to drive a standard 15-minute course on a professional grade driving simulator while having a conversation with a member of the research team. Half were talking via cell phone. Half were talking to the person next to them in the passenger seat. Researchers flipped a coin to assign students to one of the 2 conditions. So think, random sampling or random assignment. Okay, and I will see you in the next video, where we'll be in chapter 11. Take care.